decided that it's been a bit of a long evening already, so maybe we skip the break and let's just move on straight to my session. And I'll also try to keep it relatively short and whatnot because we've heard a lot of good things already today, so that we can move on to the panel that we're advertising the whole day already here. So, oh, now it's going everywhere. Oh, there's spoilers. There we go. Oh, this is forward and this back. Okay. We used the completely different thing yesterday, so obviously I got confused. Okay, so you saw some spoilers, but that's already good. You're just on the edge. You know, you're excited to hear all the stuff that you saw. So yeah, anyhow, opening doors. So essentially, I was asked by Lucas here and kind of like everyone here who's organizing this to do a bit on my story, on how I've gone from an actual Aaltoes team member and an Aalto student to become a open source contributor and doing all this work that Lucas mentioned in the beginning as well and everything. So that's going to be part one of this talk, and then part two will be how to contribute. Now, Ricardo did a great job of kind of covering some of those topics already, and obviously Sarah as well, and everyone has been kind of talking about these things, but I'm maybe going to give some examples on concretely how to get started, as concrete as one can get, maybe, hopefully. Let's see. But obviously, if you have any questions about that, we can obviously discuss more in the panel as well then.
I forgot to say that you're also a Native Ambassador. You flew here from New York to have this event and all these kind of things.
Yes, exactly. So I am from Finland, but I live in New York right now. So it's really lovely to be here in my home country and an ex-Aalto student as well in my home university, I guess. So that's cool. But yeah, a tiny bit about me. Lucas already mentioned a lot of the stuff. Yes, I run a company called Vevo in New York. I'm a CNCF ambassador as well as an Azure and AI platform VP. And what those two essentially mean is that I just really like tech communities. I love contributing to them. I love doing these kind of events and sharing my knowledge about these topics. And then I'm also been doing Cloud Gossip podcast and different shows and content. And I've been doing a hosted Club Native Live, which is a CNCF weekly live stream for a couple of years, and a host of other things, which I maybe talk more in the next slide. But a lot of things, a lot of contributions and whatnot, which is exactly why I'm here today talking to you about these topics. So let's get to this slide, which was, I guess, up a bit more, and some people will be like, huh, what's that about? Well, this is the my career or my contributor story slide, where I have the three different kind of like phases to my story in this phase. So essentially we have, they're trying to find some type of icon for like startups, like a lot of startup focused work, and I think Rocket Ship felt kind of adequate, maybe. I think, you know, I'm seeing some nodding, if maybe people are agreeing. So I started in Aaltoes in 2012, which was just like 2 months after Mikki Kuusi was aboard, like a president of Aaltoes. So this was back when Slash was still about like 1,000 people, relatively tiny, and I worked with Aaltoes up until 2016, 2015, you know, you show that kind of stuff. Yeah, and it was actually really lovely to come here, and I was like, oh, I wonder if I'm going to see any people who I remember back from those days, and immediately Mike was here, and I was like, lovely, perfect, same faces I feel sometimes here, so it's always lovely to see friendly faces. But a lot of fun stories could be shared from that time, but I don't want to get too into it because I'll feel like an old geezer very, very fast. But I can say that it was really fun to see all of these that Aaltoes is doing this year. And it's also fun to see how all of these things kind of cycle through constantly. I used to organize events like Build It, we called Build It, but they were very different back then. Mike is organizing with Aaltoes Tomorrow Pitch It. I used to organize that as well, different as well. So fun to see that there's, you know, movement happening. And I was also lucky to see and happy to see all the chairs here, because I think these are the exact same chairs that I've been carrying in Aaltoes 10 years ago. So very familiar with these chairs, a lot of chairs carrying for sure. But that's kind of what I was doing then. And then I got recruited from all of these kind of startup activities to run a co-working space for Microsoft. A startup co-working space specifically, with coaching and all of these kind of things. And I think this makes the transition. Startups are already techie, and I had kind of like a bit of coding background a bit before that. But after that, I started working for Microsoft, and after that for other tech companies, the transition from startups and startup ecosystem to actual, infrastructure technology starts to make kind of a lot of sense. And that is exactly where I met Lucas then, for example, and we started the CNCF and Kubernetes Meetup in Finland. And this is where obviously my contributions to the open source and specifically cloud native and CNCF ecosystem kick off quite a bit, as you can imagine. We talked a lot about different projects and all the different things today, but I do then see that I kind of start learning more, contributing more, and really diving deeper into the topics and really understanding the communities and giving back to them as well. And then I see kind of from 2021 forward, that's when I started really, really doing a lot of stuff. And you can see kind of in life, there's always these moments where you usually work hard, so you kind of, plant seeds and you grow them, and then eventually they're going to start, it's time for harvest. So I see that after you work hard with these kind of topics for a while, you'll start seeing the fruit of your labor kind of come in. And I feel like eventually these things, particularly here, everyone's kind of been asking, oh, how does can you make a living? What does open source contributions lead to and whatnot? So I can say that from my side at least, there's a lot of things and benefits that it leads to. Well, we mentioned today already that people have found jobs from these communities, and the same goes for me and a lot of other people. And for me, I'm also happy that I've been able to talk at 5 different tech conferences in 5 different continents, over 60 events. So it's been really, really great to share these topics with everyone, and also it's been a really great way for me to learn, obviously, as well, because the best way to learn is by teaching as well. So there's a lot of good things there. But I think the biggest part about it all, what it kind of all boils down to, is that it is you can help there's a typo, but that's okay, help to shape the conversations that influence global tech communities. So I think with all of these events, with all of these contributions, it's really great to see that your work has an impact to a lot of people globally, and that impact can happen by projects growing, and you see them grow and being adapted, and people actually getting a lot of benefits from them, and that contributions can be either code contributions or non-code contributions. So it's really great, and that impact is surely going to be around for a long time as well. Now, it is not just me, there's a lot of people doing this, and that means that there's a lot of different stories from people who have contributed a lot to open source. And now, if you are looking for those stories and feeling like, oh, is there someone who could maybe be someone's story that I could take inspiration to, you can always hop on to the Humans and Cloud Native area in CNCF area. That's a specifically cloud native contributor stories. You can see here a couple of them. So everything from all these people doing blogging and podcasting, communication, chatting in different community groups, and then also a GitOps maintainer and whatnot that's come up a bit as well, and so forth. A bit more about that later. But I think we've heard about CNCF and landscape and projects a lot. Some people might have seen this. Who hasn't seen this before? Okay, there's one person, that's cool. But a lot of people have seen it. And this is the one of the funniest images because it is massive nowadays. It's the CNCF landscape and also this is just 1/3 of it nowadays. And I was surprised when I was trying to fit it into 1 slide or 2, and I was like, no, it takes 3 slides nowadays. So it's definitely a lot to take in and a lot to understand, where can you fit into the ecosystem and where could your voice and where your contributions occur. So I think it's important to then just kind of zoom in a bit and see what's happening there a bit closer. So if we zoom in, for example, there, we see that in the scheduling and orchestration area, we have different projects there, and now it starts to feel a lot more approachable when we actually zoom into the document, because that big thing, it's too much. No one's going to be able to be like, oh, I want to do that or that or that from there. So if we start zooming in, we can see, oh, this is an area that I could be interested in. And then you can see, oh, there's a project called CADA, for example, that you might be thinking, oh, I want to contribute maybe there. That could be interesting. And as an example of what kind of these projects look like, how many here has heard about CADA before? A couple people, good. And we did hear about Argo and whatnot before, but if you are now wondering, what are these projects? How do they look like? How do they feel like? why are people contributing? What are they contributing to? An example of CADA, so it's Kubernetes event-driven autoscaling. It's a graduator project within CNCF. Part of, like Ricardo told you, all the different stages that the projects go through. So graduated, so very mature there. So what is it? So default Kubernetes scaling is not really well suited for event-driven applications. So CADA helps with that by providing event-driven scale controlling that can run inside any Kubernetes cluster and preemptively then act to downscale or upscale. Now, to actually show you rather than just talk and tell, use actual examples rather than just images here and there and words. I have a quick demo. Yeah, I know. I've been thinking about it the whole time, and I've been sitting there like, do I want to do this live demo? But I decided that I want to live on the edge and dangerously and actually try to do it. And it's going to be a first. Yeah, well, no, it's fine. It's going to be a first for me as well, doing a demo while kind of huddled over here. It's a super quick one, so it's fine. I need to do just a couple things. Okay. So it's going to be a super simple demo. So scaling.NET Core working with average service bus. So you can see here order quoter, order processor, orders coming in, order generator. So essentially, it will be, you can imagine a web shop gets a bunch of orders at the same time. You need to really scale up your demand, and then obviously scale down as well, because you don't want to spend compute, you don't want to spend cost that's not needed. So let's see how it actually looks like in practice. So then I have things a bit set up here. This screen was obviously much bigger than my own, so let's just make things a bit better maybe. There we go. Hopefully it's kind of visible. Yeah, well, I figured because the screen is absolutely massive, so you should be able to see some things at least. Okay, this is gonna be tricky. So we do kubectl get services. So there we see the external IP, and this is probably the hardest part. Then we go here, and then we get actual visibility into the order portal when it loads. And there we can then start getting more visibility into other parts. So we can go here, get visibility there, do kubectl get deployments there. Can't even see if it's working, but it should be. And then there, so then we see we have order processors, how many of them are ready, and then we see orders, what's the status of them, so that we can see are they being generated or not. And then we can do the actual fun part of the demo. So we do .NET run, and then it's going to ask, let's queue some orders. How many do you want? And this is when I turn to you. So how many orders do we want to queue up? How many orders will our web shop receive? So can I give a number? Can I get a number between 100 and 150? Anyone? 149, did you say? Perfect. That is a good number. 149. There we go. It's going to get a little fast. So we see queuing orders. Cheese, sausage, soap, chips, bite, bacon, keyboard, all of them coming in. And then we see the order queue going up. We can see order processors starting to get ready. We can see them pending and they're created. So it is all orders going up. So it is nicely kind of going. You can see tuna, mouse, shirt, cheese, so many things. We are at 4 out of 4 order processors. And as you can see, the order queue is about to hit the maximum there. Well, not the maximum, the 194 that we asked for. And now we will see the orders are starting to get handled as well. We see the order queue starting to decrease. Because as you can see, we moved on from actually creating new resources to actually just running them and going through all those orders. And as you can see, we are at 8 out of 8, and now 8 out of 10. So 10 out of 10 order processors. So we have auto scale successfully there, which is usually, this is where it ends up, 10 out of 10. And we're handling them, and as you can see, we are nearing 0 there. We are handling that order queue nicely, perfectly. Things went smoothly, which I'm very happy about, because demos, they can always go wrong. But that's nice. Obviously, super important is going to be actually the downscaling as well, which should be happening I'll give you a spoiler in about a couple minutes, so we're not gonna sit here staring at this screen for a couple minutes only, but if I remember, I can show it to you like when it starts germinating things, but honestly, it's not as flashy or cool, they just go down, it's all good, it's a simple demo in that sense. So this is kind of the exciting part for sure. But that's it, that was all the exercise that I got needed from moving around here and squatting, and then we are done with that. So that is an example of a project in Ciencia. So you can see this is how the projects look like, these are what they do, this is how the stuff that you could be contributing to, for example. Now, obviously these things don't happen out of nowhere, as we've talked by a lot of the speakers today. All of these open source projects need contributors, they need people running these, they need people even writing these kind of blog posts, you know, that these are actually a sandbox project, graduated project and whatnot, so there's a lot of things that are needed to be done. And these are not faceless projects, these are not projects, you know, maintained by some people somewhere. There is actually, you can go in and check who are the people behind it, so you can check here who are the TODO maintainers, for example, and even the alumni maintainers. And I think this, for me at least, is somehow usually quite helpful if I'm wondering, oh, is this project interesting or whatnot? Just to remind yourself there's people behind it. And if you go into the project and you say, hey, I want to help, there's probably going to be a Jeff, a Jan, or someone else who's going to see your request, probably going to be super appreciative, be happy that they are getting someone in new to the project. So, you know, that's something that you can think about. That if you were swamped with a lot of work and someone came in and said, hey, I want to help out, I think you would probably be happy. So probably most of the maintainers will be happy as well if you pump in and you say, I want to help. And in addition to maintainers, as everyone's also mentioned, there's so many different roles that you can take, so many different levels of involvement. Like you don't have to go full-time maintainer, trying to make a living immediately of things. You can obviously make that maybe a long-term goal at some point, or you can, you know, start from different things, and even you don't need to do this, you know, official or anything, but there's so many different roles that you can do and find your spot in contributing to the cloud native ecosystem or open source as a whole. There's obviously a bunch of other foundations under Linux Foundation umbrella, as well as anything else that you can hump it. And again, kind of so many stories that you can run through just from cloud native humans alone, but there's probably so many different blog post content to find like your inspiration on someone who's done maybe something who has a similar story to you that you can find, or something else. And there's also a handy dandy page where you can just, you know, start your journey as well, so you can contribute. This is the CNCF contributors page. So if you're completely stumped, you can go there. And also a good tip that I heard is that if you are completely stumped on what to do, how to start contributing, there's also a way to start contributing to contributor experience. So if you feel that you are not finding a resource how to start contributing, maybe the first time that you contribute is a new resource on how to find a place to contribute. So really the kind of sky is the limit when you can think about these things. Now, if we're thinking about startup contributions, like if you have a company or if you're interested in something like that, there's obviously a lot of resources around that. And if you are thinking about these things, there's really good couple of videos in YouTube from the Cloud Native Startup Fest, from the North American one and the EU one. So if you have been thinking about building an open source startup, have an open source startup, just interested in the topic, these two playlists in YouTube, super, super handy. They have really good topics from just as, you know, licensing issues, panels from VCs on talking about what does open source startups, what type of startups they look for, how to raise funding as an open source startups, all of these topics and success stories and all of these kind of things. Really worthwhile you'll listen and watching these if you're interested in these topics, and maybe you can obviously ask about them in the panel as well. A good example of that is, for example, there's a isovalent case study there in part of that videos, which is a good example of an open source startup who's been very successful in making good amount of revenue and money alone, and then being acquired by Cisco. So kind of completing that startup life cycle in some ways, which is obviously kind of what everyone sets out to do in some ways when they start a startup. Not the acquisition part necessarily, but you know, finding some type of end goal and finishing that journey for you, whether that be an exit, acquisition, or IPO or something like that. A really good example of that. And they had a really good example there of how you can see in a essentially linear graph the GitHub stars that they have and that the revenue they were building for the company go hand in hand up. So you can really see like how the open source contributions and open source work led to really good business outcomes as well. I will put all of my links and slides to my GitHub as I usually do, and then I have just the links there as well. A lot of people took pictures of them already, so it's good. But that's it from my side. I guess we now move to the panel. Maybe we have a break. Lucas is up next. Thanks so much.